In this video, we'll be looking at Nasdaq 100 and we are on the weekly chart. And in regards to the weekly chart, the last time we spoke about this particular chart, we had mentioned that at this point in time, the anticipation is for the market to continue to move further up to around this level, more or less, right? Why do we say that level? That is because in the past, we had this very nice W structure, which had a neckline at that point. And you guys know that we saw the market after breaking the neckline coming back to the neckline to test it, and at the neckline is where we would have looked for those potential buying opportunities, and our take profit would have been this level over here, more or less, right? Let me just actually mark that level because it's very much important. Let's have a look. This is the level at which we expect Nasdaq 100 to head to, more or less. And also I want to add my neckline for that W structure. Let's have a look, and here's our neckline, more or less, right? So from here, what I'm going to do is head down to the daily chart. Let's have a look, and here we are on the daily chart. And what do we see on the daily chart? In fact, before we continue, I just want to add my daily channel as well, as it's very much important. Let's have a look. Just bear with me, guys. So there goes our daily channel, more or less. And remember, on the weekly chart, guys, we spoke about how we have that W structure, which is over here, right? And it has a neckline at that point. We saw price breaking to the upside of that neckline, coming back to the neckline to test it, and at this point is where we would have looked for those potential buying opportunities. To add to that, we had also had another W structure at this point, which also has a neckline at that level, right? And we saw price breaking to the upside of that neckline, coming back to around this level, and then pushing further up, right? If this level over here aligned with any key numbers that we have on the Fibonacci retracement tool, we would have looked for potential buying opportunities at that level, depending on the level on Fibonacci, right? So what do we see, guys, now that we are on the daily chart? On the daily chart, I really don't see much. What I see is at this level over here that we have some sideways movement somewhat, and the market is a bit choppy at this point, and it's also a little bit unpredictable because we actually have a few structures there that are opposing each other. Number one, we have this W structure over here, which has a neckline at that point, guys. We saw price breaking to the upside of that neckline and then coming back to the neckline to test it, and at this level I believe that we should be looking, or rather we should have been looking for those potential buying opportunities, right? I'm just going to add a neckline for that W structure, and just bear with me while I do so. So there goes more or less the neckline of our W structure. There we go, right? And as much as we have this W structure over here, let me just actually mark it properly. As much as we have this W structure over here, which has a neckline at that point, I hope you guys can see that we also have another W structure over here, which also has a neckline at that level. I hope you guys can see that, right? So should price break to the upside of that neckline, the anticipation would be for the market to head back to the neckline to test it, right? And if it does so, at this point is where we would look for further buying opportunities. Having said all this, guys, having said all that, as much as we have this W structure over here, let me just actually draw it properly, just bear with me. As much as we have that W structure over here, can you guys also see that we have what seems to be an opposing M structure over here with a neckline at that point? Can you guys see that? So what does this mean? This tells me that trading Nasdaq 100 at this point in time is a bit risky. Why? That is because we have two opposing structures. Number one, as I said, guys, we have this W structure which has a neckline at that point, and number two, we have this M structure which also has a neckline more or less at that point, right? And just also remember that I spoke about how we have this W structure as well, right? So we have this M structure as well as this W structure. In addition to this, we also have this M structure over here, in addition to this opposing W structure. So this tells me that buying or selling at this level is a bit risky, and the market may go in either direction. To add to this, guys, just also bear in mind that we're in earnings season, and we are going to see some tricky movements in as far as Nasdaq 100 goes over the next couple of days and even weeks, right? Anyway, from here, what I'm gonna do, guys, is head down to the H4 chart. Okay, let's have a look. However, before I do so, I just also want to point out that we have these candlesticks over here, and what they are candlesticks with small bodies. They're actually bearish candlesticks with small bodies and quite long lower wicks, and they're telling us that there's a lot of liquidity stuck at those levels where those wicks end, and that in the future we will see the market head down to those levels to grab all of that liquidity. And that is because liquidity is actually money that needs to be triggered by the market at one point or another, right? Anyway, let's head down to the H4 chart. From the H4 chart, I'm just gonna fix my channels somewhat. Just bear with me while I do so. Let's have a look. There we go, more or less. There we go, there we go, there we go. There we go, there we go. Let's have a look. There we go, right? And here we are on the H4 chart, right? And what do we see on the H4 chart? Just to recap, guys, remember on the daily chart we spoke about how we have this W structure over here, which has a neckline at that point. We saw price breaking to the upside of that neckline, coming back to the neckline to test it, and at this point is where we would have looked for those potential buying opportunities, more or less, right? To add to that, I also spoke about how we have this huge opposing M structure, which also has a neckline at that level, right? And should price come back to around this level, break to the bottom side of that neckline, we would wait for it to head back to the neckline to test it, and at this point is where we would look for further selling opportunities. But I did say to you guys that in as far as buying or selling in the zone, things are a bit tricky, and the market may just go in either direction, right? But now that we are on the H4 chart, we can also see that we have this sideways movement over here, right, which doesn't really help us because it speaks to what I said earlier, in that we might see the market push either up or down, but there's no clear movement in as far as where exactly the market will head to, right? So myself personally, at this point in time, I don't think I will be trading Nasdaq 100, and that is because, as I've said, the market is a bit choppy and it may head in whichever direction, right? To add to this, guys, just also note that we have what seems to be a very strong resistance area over here, right? It's a very, very strong resistance area, and what may possibly happen is that we might see the market push further down to around this level, only to push further up again to around this level, and then we might see it again pushed further down, or even continue to push further up. Nonetheless, having said all this, this thing is, in my humble opinion, too risky to trade at this point in time, and for now I would stay out of the market and perhaps look at the charts again on Monday.